All right. So, welcome everybody to our Ali Near-Death and Spiritually Transformative Experiences workshop. And my name is Catherine Chappie, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. And I'm especially happy because Ned Matinnia is here, and he is somebody who I know his heart is completely in with near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. And so he has a wonderful presentation to share with us and a wonderful journey to share with us also. So welcome, Ned. So nice to have you here.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes. My name is Ned, and it's interesting how NED is like what's the word? It's an anagram of NDE, and so I think it was meant to be.
That's right. That's right.
And so let me share my wonderful presentation.
Right. There we go.
So, how do we love actually? And the context it's hard on Earth. It's not easy here, and almost all near-death experiencers they come back talking about love, and beyond talking about it, how can we actually live it and apply it? And for anyone wondering, I haven't actually seen Love Actually. I looked it up. It's a British uh, a rom-com, and it's about loving in hard or challenging situations. I take it. So if anyone has seen it, I hope you enjoyed it. And who am I? Well, I had a traumatic childhood, and because of that, when I was a teenager, I thought about suicide. I didn't have um, much to live for, and it was NDEs that saved my life and pointed me to the answer, love. And my mom, this is her and I, um, uh, it is gentle and kind in her own way. However, when I was a kid, uh, she focused on her own books, her own magazines, and wasn't fully present as a healthy role model. And oftentimes, once she left my dad, she would always treat us to anything I wanted, a junk food or all that. And so, even though she cared a lot, I didn't have a healthy parental upbringing. And my sister, this isn't a picture of her, however, it looks like her. With the tattoos and piercings. And so basically, uh, Dad, he impacted us all, and he was kind of the core reason for so much of the trauma, including my speech at times. Um, it's all stems from issues from him. Not that I put all the blame on him, but what's interesting is I've had a lot of readings with mediums over years. And even without me asking about him or prompting, they always tell me it was because of your dad and you're still healing this. And so, because of the trauma I've had, he was always controlling and strict. Um, some of the uh, mediums I've talked to have called him a tyrant, even without, you know, knowing anything about him, but just what spirit had told them is that he can be a tyrant, and that is true. And so he would often demean us verbally, mentally, and sometimes physically. And I haven't intentionally spoken to him in over 7 years, which I think is for the best. Um, so because I had a traumatic childhood, um, when I was younger, like a teenager, I became an atheist because I thought it had the most logical answers of science, of reality. And in atheism and materialism, it basically says that love or emotions are just chemicals in the brain, and there isn't any ultimate, you know, higher aspect of love or purpose of love. It's only for evolution. It's only for uh, animals, of which we also are, to procreate. And so that is the worldview I used to have, and I think a lot of people even now still have that. And then when I came across near-death experiences, that they often talk about how love is the most important and powerful force in the whole universe in terms of it isn't just human love. It's that we are all loved, and there is a God, there's a higher power who loves us all with a force and immensity that we can't even imagine here. And oftentimes experiencers are encouraged to come back to Earth if it isn't their time and to express that love and tell people um, that love is the answer. But it's hard on Earth because life happens, stuff happens, and our plans get foiled, or we have arguments with people, or unexpected hiccups happen, and it can be so difficult. So the challenge I see in so many experiencers and for humanity, for everyone, including myself, is they say that Earth is a school, and it is a challenge here. It's not easy. It's not a heaven here. It's a challenge, a challenging place. But the reason we're here is to apply love in every situation we can, or at least try to. And so, back when I was a teenager, I believed in, atheism because I didn't see any evidence of um, any higher power, any afterlife, any spirit, and because of this, I believe that we didn't have any inherent meaning to be good or to be helpful or kind. It's everything is seen as purely transactional, and we see this a lot in our business world and in our leaders at the moment. It isn't about an overall sense of love or oneness or unity. It's about, if you have something and I want to take it, I'll take it, and there is no higher power to judge me. There are no consequences. And this is a major reason I'm here and I love to talk about NDEs, is because the world needs to wake up. And even coworkers I talk to, and I visit Stanford University here, and there are so many smart people, but they are, but that pervasive belief of everything I'm sharing here is so ingrained in that there isn't any ultimate reason. In a place where we have people who are trillionaires, we have the record homelessness. Anyway, that's a whole tangent. But I used to be the atheist, and I came across this book, Dr. Raymond Moody's Life After Life, and it opened my eyes because it was our first reputable, evidence-based information that there are these experiences happening, and they are real. It's not hallucinations. Patients have medical records uh, and what's called veridical perception, where people experience accurate hearing, seeing, emotional intuiting, even outside of their body, even during clinical death. And all this as a scientist that I am, I'm an open scientist, and so I'm like, wow, this seems a lot of interesting evidence. And when people have these experiences and they say that it's ineffable and that it's like our human words and understanding are so small and limited, it really got me thinking. And how they talk about, that people often have out-of-body experiences. They sometimes are hovering in the corner of the hospital room or above the scene of whether it's an accident. And then they talk about oftentimes encountering a being of light or power, and it has so much love. They also talk about a life review and oftentimes experiencing um, not just their own perspective, but how it felt from the people they interacted with. And then a common theme is the bright light, and some people call it source or God. And I put the hand here because some experiencers said that it's almost like they were being physically held and supported. And it's just like everything goodness and everything benevolent we can imagine is in this light. And so after I read Life After Life, I came across experiencer accounts on YouTube. And so this is my friend Ellen Dye and in her story. And in her experience, she met her um, guides and soul family, and they told her that they were so proud of her for how hard it is here on Earth. This is Mary Jo Rapini, and I love her story because of an anecdote I'll share later on in terms of how she interacted with God or the higher power. And then David Bennett, who recently transitioned home for good. He, his story was incredibly powerful, and he used to be kind of a brash uh, um, uh, type of person who didn't have much empathy for other people. And in his experience, he was told repeatedly when he argued that he had to return to Earth, and they told him, "You have a purpose. You have a purpose. You have a purpose." And then on the third saying that, he was actually sent back. And then Martha St. Clair, who had her experience as a college student while water skiing, uh, the cord uh, wrapped around her neck and choked her. That's how she had her experience. And in that, she basically uh, learned that we do have a purpose here. And she saw how uh, she had been living up to that point, partying and whatnot. It was kind of missing the mark of what her soul had planned. So it was kind of a course correction. And then after this in 2013, I I created the first and largest near-death experiences group on Facebook and I think the internet, especially at that time. And we currently have almost 350,000 members. It's on Facebook, and if you're not already in there, um, uh, you are welcome to join. And I started it as a place to share articles and videos. And over time, it just organically grew. And we now have a team of myself and 7 moderators. And I always pray for the group to help people ultimately. And if you ever want to join it, you can find it at facebook.com/groups/return from death, and it's just called near-death experiences. And it has this cosmos picture in the background. And um, in sharing these experiences, and we talk about how to actually love. Mary, in her experience, she was at the gym working out, and she had lifted some heavy weights, and I think she got a aneurysm um, in her neck, or some kind of a blood a clot or something. And so in her experience, she passed out, and they took her to the hospital. And in her experience, she recalled being physically held by a higher power. And like a lot of experiencers, it told her, you can't stay because you have more to do on Earth. And she argued with it, and she asked why, and it told her she hadn't given enough. And then she asked, she explained, well, I work at the cancer center. I'm on call all the time. I help so many people. How can you tell me I haven't given enough? And it gently told her, let me ask you one question. Have you ever loved any person the way you have been loved within this short time here? And her answer was, no, it's impossible. I'm just a human. And she talked about how it had a sense of humor. It was so loving and gentle. And it told her in a loving way, you can do better. And so I think it's a good example of, when we talk about how to actually love, is it just about the practical things? Is it just about giving money or time? All of those are examples of helping and supporting, but also I think the point it was showing her was it's also about the heart and the intention. Like when you talk to people, how is your tone? Are you truly empathizing with them, or are you just um, going through the motions? And it was emphasizing about being present and truly loving in a personal way. And then my friend Louisa, who used to be an atheist, incredibly intelligent, and in her experience, um, um, she was, I think, in college or just at the end of high school. I can't uh, recall which. And at that time, she was in with the partiers and had did cocaine, and she was sold lidocaine and actually had a poisoning from that and passed out uh, um, in a club. And in that experience, it opened her eyes it- um, to the fact um, that there is an afterlife, there is more, and that atheism is not the answer. And more than that, she met a guide or her angel, and she asked what his name was, and he told her it's Ignacio with an E. And so in her experience then and in the years and decades after, he has consistently shown up in her life, helping her. Even sometimes examples of tough love, because she had struggled with alcoholism even after her experience, because her mindset was, I want to have a fun life and I want to do what I want. I don't want to be goody goody and go to church every Sunday. I'm not into all that. And so it's been a process of even after her NDE to realize it isn't about all of that. but it is about our healthy habits. And so, uh, one time after a party, she was drunk driving and drove over a narrow bridge, um, and she almost, I think, hit the edges or drove off it. And I guess he, as her guide, corrected her, and immediately, almost like a powerful voice, cut through her drunkenness, and it told her, "You do know right from wrong, and this is the last time I'm going to help you if you don't change." And it was a big wake-up call. And since then, she joined Alcoholics Anonymous and changed her life in that aspect. But also at other times, Ignacio has helped her. He kept on telling her to get health insurance, and she kind of rebelled, and then eventually, I think she had uh, uh, breast cancer or something afterwards. And so after she had the insurance, it really helped her in that situation. Also, uh, she lives in Seattle, or at least at the time, and they have a lot of hills there. And he told her that her brakes are failing, and to not go down a steep hill because otherwise it would end up in a crash. And it was interesting because of how that ended. And she realized after pulling over that her brakes were completely shot. And so he's also encouraged her um, to just let them love you because of her own personality at times. You know, uh, um, she liked to be cool and hip and uh, edgy, and he told her, just let people love you and soften into that. And one time in AA, a new member joined up, a young woman, and the woman asked Louisa if she would be her sponsor. And initially, Louisa was hesitant and not really interested. And Ignacio, he chimed in and he said, "How is she any crazier than you were? Just love her." And she took her in, and it became a beautiful friendship. And David Bennett, who I mentioned earlier, his experience, it happened because as a professional diver, he was in a storm off of the Ventura coast here in California. And he learned a lot in that experience because of his soul family taught him. And he came back with an acronym, AT&T. And T. And we might have heard about it as a phone company, but what he said they taught him was acceptance, tolerance, and truth. And so everyone is at their own level of experience and understanding. You know, you could have people who are criminals, people who are homeless, people who have blue hair. You could have a strict Southern Baptists, and all of them, like from the perspective of the higher power, they're all equal, they're all loved. And he said that, you know, even if you can't outright love a person, just tolerate them, and perhaps see if you can accept them, because it's almost like a scale of, you know, it's like tolerance is the first baby step, because of many of us were taught, you know, well, uh, some people are worthy and others are not. Others are deserving of our scorn, and what his guides showed him was to accept everyone, as long as you know, someone isn't hurting anyone else. If it's just a difference of style or a thought process, you know, it's okay. And what's interesting is that in his experience, he said, for the days and weeks after it, when he looked at like palm trees or other plants or animals, he saw colors and auras, and I find all that fascinating. And uh, Rudy Rudinsky um, was raised in Texas as a strict Baptist, and he grew up in the Cold War. He was taught to hate Russian commies or gay people or immigrants. All of that um, judgment of people who uh, were different than he was. And he had a car accident, and it nearly decapitated him. And in his experience, he talked to a higher power, and God told him in no uncertain terms, "I love everyone, no exceptions." And uh, that's the short form of it. His experience uh, was longer than that, but he got the message. And when he came back, he has since helped others who were like him to change their ways. Penny is a nurse, I think, in Tennessee or Kentucky. And in her experience, um, she encountered a vast darkness. And initially, she felt lost and confused and abandoned. And after what seemed like hours of this, eventually the blackness started breaking up, and her deceased grandmother showed up and was radiant and the most beautiful she'd ever seen her. And in that beautiful reunion, her grandmother told her and explained how Penny's own walls of protection she had built up were actually the cause of all that initial blackness, because of Penny in her own life and her own hurts had started to put up walls to keep others out. And so I find it fascinating how, like, we think about our physical body, then we have an energy body all around us and our aura all around us. And so it's a good example how all of that energy which we are emitting stays with us until we work on it or heal it or release it. And so it's, and in her experience, um, she realized how all her walls of protection were keeping everyone out, and even more importantly, were keeping love out. And something interesting about her story is that the cause of her dying um, was because of careless and perhaps even hurtful actions on or from a fellow nurse, a coworker who she'd had a history with as being difficult, and and her negligence led to Penny's passing out and I think asphyxiating. And she was initially so angry at her for letting this to happen. Um, but after her experience, and in her experience, God showed her uh, that particular coworker, the issues around her and her upbringing, her abuse, her trauma, and showed her that given everything she has been through, it's a wonder that she's even functioning this well in terms of showing Penny that even though from the outside all Penny sees is someone who's, let's say, cold or mean, um, that this other nurse was doing the best she could given her circumstances. And when she came back, Penny actually wrote her a heartfelt letter and apologized for her judgment, and it was really a heart-opening experience. Chris Batts. And so he had one of the most painful and traumatic childhoods I've ever come across. He, as an infant, his mother put him up for adoption because uh, 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 she didn't want the responsibility of a child or any of that. And when Chris was, I think a teenager, perhaps in high school, um, he um, received a phone call from his biological mother. And I think it was either an accident or something. And he called her back and he tried to talk to her and gain her acceptance and love. And she told him on the phone, you know, I don't want you. I don't love you. Don't call me ever again. And for him, that was the last straw. And he was in his friend's car driving down the freeway, and he just opened the car door and jumped out. And he hit the pavement at, I think, like 70 miles an hour, and he instantly had an NDE. And in his childhood, his uh, foster parents had raised him in a strict fundamentalist uh, a Christian, and so it was all about hell. It was all about fear and punishment and all this. And in his experience, he met God, and it wasn't anything like he expected because it loved him and it told him, you know, you don't have to be perfect. Like I don't expect anyone to be perfect. I love you and everyone else exactly as you are. And he showed him images of a homeless person, of a criminal, of a rich person in a suit, of a prostitute, of all types of people. And he's like, I love all of them. And he told Chris to return to Earth and in his life um, uh, to spread this message and that he would end up helping a lot of people, and he has been. He's become a speaker, helping troubled youth, and his message is a perfect example of how to actually love. Barbara um, had a wealthy life, you know, with homes and boats and cars, and so her mindset it was uh, um, materialistic, as a lot of our culture kind of values. We look up to the billionaires or trillionaires, and she came back realizing that all that was not important. It can be nice to own things, but that's just a tangent, and that it's really about how we treat each other and what we're doing here. Are we able to make a difference or to help other people to increase the joy and heart energy on Earth? A lot of experiencers talk about how Earth is a school. Earth is not our home. It's hard here. It's like a field trip or it's like a gym or a boot camp. And we, in a lot of ways, our souls choose to come here for growth. And it's almost like let's say our home is in spirit somewhere and love is everywhere. when you're surrounded in it, it's easy. Like you don't have to try, you don't have to put forth any effort. We come here to sort of stand on our own 2 feet and bring and shine that love here in these challenging situations. Um, and oftentimes they talk about how we chose a lot of our challenges, including our parents, including perhaps particular handicaps, perhaps particular circumstances that our soul knows, let's say, are a little out of our comfort zone in terms of will help expand us and grow us. And in all of those challenges, what's the answer? It's ultimately love. It's how can we apply love in that situation? If you just got bad news or rejection or things fall apart. So in my NDE group, which I showed earlier, uh, what are some of the lessons or examples of love? Well, oftentimes, um, uh, one thing that happens occasionally is religious preaching, and some people join not to learn and share about NDEs, but to just preach their own beliefs. And in a group about NDEs, a challenge is how to handle that. And then it leads to arguments and people who are arguing over, let's say, a belief system, or, one person is an atheist and one person is a medium, and he's calling her a fraud because he thinks they're all impossible. We have these situations happen, and how to actually apply love in this kind of a tricky situation. I'm often, and my team, we have to act as uh, mediators and explain how, oftentimes both people have valuable insights and can uh, learn from each other, but also, that we all come from different backgrounds and perspectives, and sometimes it isn't about, one person wins, the other loses, or one person is right, the other is wrong. There's often value on all sides. It's just a matter of finding that. And eventually, what's often beautiful is when people are sharing about their experiences and other people can understand or can support them, and that a sense of community is so precious. And and so if Earth is a school and we're here to apply love, even when it's challenging, how to do that? Well, we can do it in traffic, when a person, let's say, cuts us off or is slow in the fast lane. But we can do it in a business. And I call it the way of the peaceful warrior. It's a philosophy and a way of looking at it. Like I don't want to hurt anyone. However, if there is an injustice or if there is someone who is causing trouble, to deal with that in a proactive and healthy way, but without hatred or the lower emotions that just make the situation worse. And it is one of the most challenging things. And I think about, like, police officers, how hard that job can be, because you're constantly dealing with people who have no um, regard, perhaps for your own safety or your own um, sanity and are doing everything possible to make life difficult. And so even in that, it's a perfect example of, let's say, on a soul level, someone choosing to be a police officer is immense opportunity for growth in that aspect. And a lot of experiencers say that God knows our hearts in terms of our true intentions. And um, we aren't expected to be perfect. No one is. But are we trying? Are we actually uh, putting the effort in the a way that we can? And so, like I mentioned with the AT&T acceptance, tolerance, and truth, if there is someone that sort of rubs us the wrong way, and they aren't harming us or anything, but we just perhaps their haircut or their ethnicity or something about them we have a hard time with, try just tolerating them, and then see if we can accept them, and eventually if we can even love them as a soul or a kindred soul, brother or sister. That is the ultimate goal. And also treating people how they want to be treated. If a person has a request, and it isn't a harmful one, but they say, I really prefer uh, being spoken to like this. If it isn't going to hurt anything, um, honoring that is often an act of love, because think about how many times our ego kind of steps in and judges, and it's almost like, well, I don't care what you want. I'm just gonna treat you how I think you should be treated. And it's always a balance, because the more empathy we have, and we think about our life review and how it will feel on the other end, it can make things smoother and happier. And it's always better to try and fail than not to try at all. It's the whole reason we're here, because it's almost like if you sign up for a gym and you never end up using the equipment, or if you sign up for a class and you never do the homework, and then the class is over and you realize you wasted your time. Howard Storm, in his experience, he he was a self-described arrogant atheist, and he was on vacation with his, I think, family in Paris, and he had a medical emergency, and then he ended up dying temporarily. And in that experience, he went to a dark, scary place with cruel, sadistic beings. He realized that the only way out of this is to ask for help. And even though he was an atheist, he thought, well, at least I'll try Jesus. And and so he prayed and he asked for help, and then he was actually helped and taken up out of there into a beautiful um, uh, a light-filled place. And he had conversations and learnings in that experience, like a lot of people. Eventually, he was told, okay, we've helped you out, but you need to return to Earth. And he really argued, and he said, I can't go back there. I'm a failure. They will hate me, because he finally started to understand from his life review how other people uh, had felt around him. And so he realized, like, oh my God, I messed up. If I return there, they're going to hate me. I'm going to just fall flat and repeat everything all over again. And uh, Jesus told him, life is about making our best effort. And when we make mistakes, because we always will, learning from them. And then he held up his hand and he had a metaphor. He said, say you only have a few options and the situation has happened. Let's say you hurt someone accidentally without wanting to, and you have a few options and you've already tried the first two options. Um, try the third option. Try doing something anew. Oftentimes, growth happens in doing new things and seeing things in um, new ways, and also to love from where you're planted. And so we all are somewhere in space time at the moment. In terms of we have people around us, either like on our phones or in person, in our offices, at home, whoever is around us, starting just to love them a little more. It could be the waiter at the restaurant. It could be the people on the road or your boss. Loving them a little more is how we all make a difference. How to love in the stickiest situations. When things don't go our way, if, in terms of like rejection, oftentimes what people learn is that humans, our egos are often hard on ourselves and each other. And we expect other people to be exactly how we think they should be when our souls know, we're all like children, to soften up and be a little more humble, a little more curious and playful, and it would make things a lot smoother and happier. And to ask for help. We often forget that there are angels, there is a higher power, there even is our loved ones in spirit who can help us out. And sometimes the only thing preventing them from helping us is we don't ask, and because they honor our free will. And if you put it out there, you say in your mind or out loud, I would like some help with this. I feel stuck. I don't know what to do. Keep your eyes and heart open, and help does come. And we are all children in God's eyes. Taking ourselves too seriously causes us to miss the magic and the love. And then I think about, how do we actually apply this in the business world? Um, we now have the world's first trillionaire. And then we have everyone else like us. And it isn't, uh, you know, uh, uh, wealth is not intrinsically bad, but we also have record levels of inequality, poverty, which often ends up in higher crime and drug use. And it's just all of these problems that come from people who are not having enough of the bare necessities. If you remember Jungle Book and Baloo and his song, you know, it's if we think about applying everything we talked about with NDEs and how love is the most important thing, not our bank accounts or our homes or our yachts. Those can be nice, um, but um, ultimately, it's uh, this slide here is showing the kind of folly of our current mainstream or our current um, zeitgeist. We have a lot of people who are now uh, focused on wealth and all this, but at the same time, deliberately or inadvertently are causing other um, suffering or lack. And ultimately, that is not healthy, and it takes us away from love. And there could be a better uh, way if we even just tweak things a little bit. It's up to us in terms of our systems. Capitalism or any system, it's just a system. It's humans who decide what we will support, vote for, use, talk about, and and my intention for this isn't to be political, but it's to be help us think about what would love do in this situation. I have a lot of coworkers who are smart people, and even not just at my current company, but all the companies I've worked at. And the common sentiment to things like this is, well, it's just how the system is, and we can't change it, or it's just, people are selfish and greedy, period. And what NDEs show us is that isn't true. Even if there are a lot of people who are still, let's say, asleep to spiritual realities, it doesn't mean that it will always be like that, or that apathy is the answer. And and so an example of love in the business world is things like fairness. Also, speaking the truth, I can't tell you how many companies, you know, uh, dishonesty is so common in terms of even little things. Like from uh, PR statements such as uh, we really value you as a customer, and we care and all this stuff. Sometimes it is true, but oftentimes the whole intention and the motive of the company is to extract as much profit as possible. And um, there's a Native American philosophy of you only take what you need and nothing more. And if we did that, we'd have a lot less suffering. Ultimately, what we do here does matter in contrast to what I used to believe. And everything that we live, our choices, the choices of others, we will also experience in our life reviews. And remembering that we're in a school here helps to put it in perspective. In that, if we just expect everything to always be easy, we will always be let down. But if we see things clearly as opportunities for growth in our character, in our capacity to love and express love, everything makes sense. Um, and and some people, um, you know, um, think about, uh, well, life is just so hard. I don't want to be here anymore. And I used to be like that myself. And now, like some experiencers, I feel like, well, I'm here now. Why not make the most of it? Because otherwise, we might have to do all this all over again, and that would be a drag. But also, but also the value of growth here. And even though we can't often understand it in our human uh, minds, our souls um, highly value this. And that is my presentation.
Wow, thank you so much. That was wonderful. All right, let me come in here with you. Thank you so much, Ned. Beautiful presentation. There's so much you said in that that was so valuable. And all right. So does anybody have any questions, comments, feedback that you would like to share with Ned?
The quiet group.
It's a quiet group. All right. I usually have a couple that get it started. So let's see if anybody's gonna be brave today. All right. Well, I so enjoyed that, Ned. And I just love some of the different things that you brought in, the different people that you talked about that have had NDEs and what they experienced and what their message was to that they brought back. One of the things that jumped out at me with this was when people had a certain belief system and then they died, right, and they crossed over, what they experienced had a lot to do with their belief system, how they were raised or their religious background. So what do you have anything you want to share about that or
Yeah. Well, and so I feel like some of that I've seen that, but also so many experiencers have been completely surprised. Like people who were atheistic, who were not expecting anything, and then all of a sudden, you know, they are in wrapped in love, and even family members or even pets they had even as children. So, our beliefs often can shape NDEs, but it isn't always the case. And what I have learned is that like God or the higher power or the universe often uh, shows us and presents what we need and what most resonates or will work with us at that time.
yeah. Yeah, it's so individualized, right, to where we're at exactly in that moment. And yeah, and also like you said, people that are or atheists or you when they cross over they can see all different types of beings that they would have normally not even believed in or thought was even possible. So I find that very interesting. And I love the story about the young lady who her angel her her angel kept.
Ignacio,
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. And finally he said, "All right, this is the last time I'm, after this, you're gonna have to face some consequences, right?" And yeah.
I
Tough
think,
blow.
yeah, well, and it's amazing because the fact that we do have helpers and that oftentimes like without even knowing like they call it unseen helpers, or even sometimes let's say a job opportunity was actually kind of guided from spirit to help us out, or a let's say we were almost going to have a car crash and they help us turn just before that happens, and so it's always makes me feel gratitude and to realize that we do have help. And sometimes even when I wake up or when I'm having a hard time, I just say, thank you for helping me. Like I don't have the whole picture yet. I
Mhm.
know I'll have it once I pass away. Uh,
Right.
but we kind of have our blindfolds on here, but I just say, I know that you guys are helping me and thank you. And, and show me what the best choices.
Yeah. Yeah, we always have help and it's up to us to ask for it. And I know myself, I even I sometimes forget to ask, and then or sometimes I don't listen when
That's
when
common.
I'm
Yeah.
when I'm getting when I'm getting something very loud or strong. Yeah, and then I end up paying a price and I'm like, "Oh, I should have listened." You had talked about the vertical NDEs. And how is that how you say it? They're vertical, right? I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways, but is it vertical or veridical?
Vertical.
Vertical. Okay.
No, no, no.
Veridical.
Vertical, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, can you talk a little bit more about that and how that really brought you into the NDE research and being open to this?
Well, because vertical perceptions are key evidences. It's like, okay, if these are real and happening, it's directly challenges our materialist belief that our brains are just are creating, illusions of consciousness. So it's like it's almost like the atheist um, materialist worldview is here. It's like if it's a balloon, um, vertical perceptions are like a needle to pop the balloon and say, "Hey, look, it's the emperor has no clothes. We have to expand our theories."
Hmm. Right, great. So that's really how they are able to
Because
scientifically somewhat prove, right, with the data that people are actually having these experiences because they're
yeah,
seeing things that are going on in other rooms, above this, the the room where they are. They're able to see from like, the corner of the room up high and things that they in their body would not have any
it would be
knowing about.
impossible. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, because our current idea is that um, um, that that only the information in our eyes, our ears, our physical senses actually are inputs, and so the idea that there could be something like a intuition or a soul, or that you can leave your physical body and float around. Our current theories say that's impossible. And so what these experiences are doing is saying, hey, well, you are wrong because it's happening. I,
Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people, or if anyone is listening, who here has had an NDE? Like, are you guys all curious, or are any of you experiencers?
I think for the most part, people are curious and open, yeah, to these experiences. I don't think that most of the people here are NDEers. I know a couple of them have had STEs or have been witness to um, STEs, like in the nursing setting, in the hospitals and things like that. So, yeah. Would you be able to talk about the benevolent virus and what that is?
Yeah. So near-death experiences saved my life. Not because I had one, although I've been told that this is this is complicated, but I had one when I was an infant, but I don't have memories from that. But but when I was a teenager and I was suicidal, NDEs saved my life because they showed me that there is a reason to be here, and that's important to be here. And in doing that, the NDE as a benevolent virus, let's say it infected me with clarity and faith and knowing. Um, so oftentimes, um, just learning about these experiences has a way of healing people and opening up worldviews, as it did in mine. And so I feel like if a person is ready, a person who has been in the materialist world for a long time, or perhaps in the religious world, perhaps like overly strict or fundamentalist, and they learn about NDEs, they realize that the reality is so much grander and beautiful than they realized. And when people learn about how much we are loved and that we do have life reviews, it does often change people who used to be perhaps bullies or sometimes selfish to kind of more empathic and thinking about, how their actions and words would impact other people, including even in the business world. And when people are focused on earning millions or billions and kind of beating out, their competitors, and it's all kind of a um, ego competition, and they learn about NDEs, they realize, it isn't about all that stress and all that kind of competitive energy. I mean, it can be nice if you want to have fun, in terms of uh, uh, building wealth, but it isn't worth the stress and the, let's say, negative things that people might do when they worship it.
Yeah, wonderful. And then one of the things you talked about was how life-changing that book, Life After Life, was for you. Yeah.
Yes, and Kathy has her hand up too. Hey,
Okay.
Kathy.
All
Yes,
right.
I'm just wondering that you had said that we chose our life situation. For instance, we chose our parents. How do we do that? Because I thought they chose us. So,
Mhm. Well, a good question. From many NDE experiences, they talk about how uh, uh, we chose a, a sort of like a soul contract in terms of like before entering this earth, we choose our parents and protect perhaps some aspects of our life, and um, so and sometimes like I don't have all the answers on this, and so it's possible that the parent souls do also have an agreement with the child or children on a soul level beyond our kind of human minds um, to make this happen. And oftentimes, in past lives, a lot of people in our lives now we have known in the past, including our parents, including our siblings or our friends. Um, so I have a friend, her name is Brooke Grove, who's an experiencer and a speaker. And she talks about how, in her experience, um, she had it. Before she had any children, or I think any even plans of having children. And in her experience, she met two beautiful beings of light, and they had each their own color and their own personality, and they kind of told her that they would be with her in the future. And it wasn't until a few years afterwards when she ended up having two boys, and then she realized those two lights she saw in her experience are the souls of her children. So there are all kinds of soul connections like this, um, and it seems like there is often planning that goes into it. So whether we choose our parents only or they choose us only. It's kind of it seems to be both often happen.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It's very different for people that haven't heard of that. Because I think in this part of the world, many people aren't aware of that is, that is something that happens. If you're curious about that, if anybody's curious about that concept, you can look into Dolores Cannon, excuse me, and her work because she, she was somebody that did hypnosis with people, and people would experience their past lives and in between lives and their planning of this life Also, another one is Life Between Lives is another good book, and Michael Newton's work, and he did a lot of work around that, the planning stages of people's lives, where he would take people in the hypnosis technique back into that part where they were planning their life and what, what their goals were for this life. So it's pretty interesting. All right. Well, I just want to say, Ned, thank you so much for being here. This was so wonderful, and I appreciate you taking time out of your morning to be with us. I just so enjoyed your talk and your presentation, and I know so many people are going to get so much out of it, and I just really appreciate you. Thank you for all
Thank
the
you,
work
Catherine.
you do. And thank you for being a cheerleader for NDEers and STEers, and I'm so glad that you're here with us and you're part of this ongoing movement to spread the word. So thank you, Ned. It's been awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
See you next week.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Ned.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.